Akiva Nichamtonu. We're going to begin from the top of the second column. Soif Masechtas Makos Emeres Gemara. At the end of Masechtas Makos, the Gemara says, "Bar Hoy Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lozman Azariah, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva Mahalchim Baderech." That Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lozman Azariah, all these people were traveling the road. Shamu Koil Hamoyna Shal Roimi. Plata Barachik Me'av Esrei Mil. They heard the sound of the tumult of Rome, 120 mil away from it. They began to cry. Rabbi Akiva Masachik, and Rabbi Akiva was laughing. Amr Loi, they told him, Remata Masachik, why are you laughing? Amr Lehem, so he told them, Remata Boichin, why are you crying? Amr Loi, so they told him, Halekushim. These Kushian that are bowing down to statues and so on, or it says some versions of Goyim, and they're bringing incense to idols. They're sitting in a calm and tranquil way and confident. The place, the house, which is the footstool of our God, is burned up in fire. Shall we not cry? Rabbi Akiva told them, this is the reason why I'm laughing. If this is the way Hashem treats those who transgress His will, how much more so to those that fulfill His will. Again, once they were going up to Yerushalayim, once they reached Mount Scopus, from the word scope, they could see from there. You could see they could be tzoife or mabit. You could see the Beis Hamikdash. They tore their clothes in the morning. Once they reached the Harabayis, the place of the Beis Hamikdash, Shul. They saw a fox that's coming out of the Holy of Holies. So they began to cry, and Rabbi Akiva was laughing. So they told him, why are you laughing? So he told them, why are you crying? So they said to him, a place that it says that the foreigner that will approach it will die. And now foxes are going at it. We should not cry. We shouldn't cry. So he said to them, that's the reason why I'm laughing. Like it says, I will tell a testimony of trustworthy witnesses. And these two people, Uriah Kohen and Zechariah ben Berechev. How does Uriah fit by Zechariah? Uriah b'mikdash rishon v'Zechariah b'mikdash sheni. The person known as Uriah was in the first base of Mikdash. Zechariah was in the second base of Mikdash. So what is it? How do they both put together? Alatola akasav and the vuasi shel Zechariah ben the vuasi shel Uriah. The pasuk connected the prophecy of Zechariah with the prophecy of Uriah. By the prophecy of Uriah, it says, "For your because of you, Sion, which is Yerushalayim, or the place of Mikdash, will be plowed like the field." Zechariah it says, "Yet will sit the old men and old ladies in the streets of Yerushalayim." And meaning that's a prophecy of Yerushalayim being rebuilt and calm and so on. As long as the prophecy of Uriah was not fulfilled, I was scared that would not be fulfilled the nevuah, the prophecy of Zechariah. Now that the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled about the destruction of Yerushalayim, I see how terrible the destruction of Yerushalayim is. So now we know that the prophecy of Zechariah is fulfilled. So now in this expression, they answered him, Akiva nichamtonu, Akiva nichamtonu. Akiva, you have comforted us, Akiva, you have comforted us. And the Rebbe says this has to do also with the Haftorah of this week, that the Haftorah this week is also says a double expression of Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. It says twice, comfort ye, my nation. And so the Rebbe connects that at the beginning of the Sikh. But the Rebbe is going to go through a very deep and analytical approach to understanding what was going on over here with the story with Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues and so on. And the Rebbe spends pages of questions. So I'm going to jump ahead to like the section where he starts a little bit with the answers. So we're skipping over a few pages to Daled. Pashtas nitten lahasbir. In a simple sense, we could explain shebishnei hamorois, in the two events where it says about what happened in Rome and how Rabbi Akiva was a positive look at the situation that Rome is being successful, and the story with the fox coming out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Niris nekudam mishutefes shebishutasim shel Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Shua, ubishutasim shel Rabbi Akiva mitzad Hashem. We see a common denominator in the view of the other Chachamim versus the view of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yeshua, Veroas, Ashliv, Shemud. Those three saw the negative of the event. Rabbi Akiva Roas HaToiv sheyetzim mekach. And Rabbi Akiva saw the future good that would result from it. The ikvius l'shitase, following his approach and his view, kidvarav b'makom acher, like he said, like his words were in a different place. La'olam yehei adam rogil, loymar called the avid rachmano l'tav avid. The person should always be accustomed to say everything that Hashem does is for good. Like the Gemara relates that this was actually the way he acted. He actually had situations where it happened to him, events, a whole entire story of where he said, everything Hashem does is for good. According to this, we could explain that the Gemara brings both of these events that took place, though it occurred at different occasions in different places. One happened outside of Rome. One happened when they were by the Harat Soifim, and obviously those were different occasions. Not because it just occurred to those Tanoim, to those authors of the Mishnah, because of the common denominator in the view of Rabbi Akiva in both, to see in the present everything good that will come out from everything that comes out later on. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is going to go on to explain that this alone is insufficient. The Gemara would only repeat it if there is some novel uniqueness that we see from this. So he says, according to this, we have to understand what is the novelty in the view of Rabbi Akiva in each one of these occasions and each one of these events. In other words, what happened by him privately, and what happened over there with the rest, when he was walking along with the Tanoim. What is the novelty of both to say everything that a person that happens to a person, he has to say that it happened for good. Then the Rebbe goes on to say that Kol Mad Ovid Rachmano Tav Ovid seems to be an accepted view in halacha, and it's very difficult to say that the other Tanoim were arguing with Rabbi Akiva. In other words, even though in the case that Rabbi Akiva first stated everything that Hashem does for good, still in all, this doesn't necessarily apply to the cases that were the story with what they saw, the success of Rome, and the story that they saw the fox running out of the Kodesh Kadoshim. So it must be their disagreement is not about the general rule about Kol Da'avid Rahman L'Tav Avid. So let's see this question aside, base. This expression, a person should always be accustomed to say everything that Hashem does he does for good, is a rule that's not under dispute, and this is even a ruling in Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't make sense that those three will go ahead and dispute this general rule. In Yuchad, especially so. Gam kasher amru b'me'ura sheni akiva nechamtonu ein hechrich sheschart al daitam. Even in the second event, where at the end of the second event they said, Akiva, you have comforted us. It doesn't really say that they went ahead and changed their minds. All they said is they comforted us. He comforted us. By the way, the Rebbe speaks about why in the first event didn't they speak about this in one of his questions that he comforted them. And Lefi Anal, Gimel, another reason why we can't say it just falls into the general rule that everything that Hashem does for good. The Rabbi Kiva first should have said his very view, if we're saying that the other Tanoim argue with Rabbi Kiva about his view about Kol David Rachman L'Tav Avid. So first, Rabbi Kiva should have stated his approach, everything Hashem does is for good, and then supported his approach by whatever logical reasoning he was applying. If Hashem does so for those that transgress his will, how much for those that fulfill his will, etc. But it seems to be that Rabbi Kiva leaves out the main underpinning of his approach. So obviously, it's not that part of the approach is under dispute. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is going to give an overview of this entire story now. The matters will be understood through giving a simple explanation of the Gemara. What was the reason that Rabbi Akiva were wondering, why are you crying? And earlier, the Rebbe poses the question that what type of question was Rabbi Akiva asked them? Why are you crying? It's an obvious thing. It's a given. You see such terrible things. You see the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, or you see the tumult of Rome being successful. I know why they're crying. I mean, yes, in the simple reading, we would think it's a rhetorical question, but that's not the indication that they were just asking rhetorical questions. He was asking a serious question by them. Why are you crying? So the Rebbe explains as follows. Rabbi Akiva was not wondering why to cry, let's say, about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And later on, we're soon going to say that all of them, when they saw the Beis Hamikdash, all of them tore their clothes, even Rabbi Akiva. It was just later on when they saw the fox that Rabbi Akiva asked them, why are you crying? So the why are you crying is triggered at a particular time. They began to cry only when they heard the sound of the tumult of Rome. They did not cry prior to that. Why did they not cry beforehand? From this is obvious. The Bichyam, their cries, it's not because the idea of Rome, that Rome was very powerful. That wasn't the reason for their cry. They knew before they even traveled on the trip. And the trip was there not just any trip, but the very fact that they had traveled at that time to Rome was really that they had some trouble and they had to go to Rome to stop certain decrees that were taking place. So obviously, they knew about Rome's power. So the question that Rabbi Akiva asked is, why are you crying now? Why all of a sudden now that you hear the tumult of Rome, are you 120 mil away? That's why you're crying. You're not crying on the general success of Rome. So too in the second story, their cry was not on the very churban, the destruction of the base of Mikdash itself. For this, it's explicit and said that they tore their garments beforehand. Ella, rather, the reason for their cry was even when they saw a fox, they began to cry. So they didn't cry when they were on Harat Soifim, when they are on Mount Scopus, and they were able to see the Beis Hamikdash destroyed. That's not when they cried. They began crying only later. The Sichos Rabbi Akiva, that's why Rabbi Akiva asked, why are you crying? What's a novel? What's something new now that because of that they began to cry? The explanation of their answer to Rabbi Akiva, these kushim are sitting in a confident way, in a tranquil way, and us, the house of the footstool of our Hashem, is burnt up in fire. So their response was as follows: Who the very fact that Rome is sitting confident and tranquil, that's not a reason for them to be crying. Adrab, that the fact that Rome was strong is actually something that's a positive thing for the Yid. Why is that? It says the Levonon, which is another term used for the Beis Hamikdash, will fall by the mighty. In other words, it had to be a mighty nation that would conquer Eretz Yisrael. It is to have the Jewish people conquered by anyone that's not mighty is actually a denigration of the Jewish people. Everything is measured according, in legal terms, as a concept that one has to pay monetary damages if one embarrasses someone else. But embarrassment is not just one type of embarrassment. It depends who the person that's doing the embarrassing and who is being embarrassed. So in the similar vein over here, that if that's the case, habusha ktana harbe yoser, kasher nefilus halavon beis hamikdash yadem malchus adira, the embarrassment and the shame on the Jewish people is much less when the Levon and the Beis Hamikdash is fallen and brought to ground through a very powerful kingdom. So therefore, that Rome is so powerful is actually something that supports the honor of the Jewish people. Kach Yuvan Yoser, but this is understood even more so. Maduahim loyid gishu tchila b'tshuvasam sharoimi ichlivas Beis Hamikdash. That's also the reason why they didn't emphasize in their answer that Rome destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. All they said is, can a nation, these people that bow down to idols, are so successful? Why don't they say even better? Rome, the nation that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, why are they so successful? Just the opposite. That the ones that destroy the Beis Hamikdash are very powerful. That's a lot better. That takes away the embarrassment of the Jewish people, like we said before. So what were the Chachamim saying? What was their point? Nosam Hoya, the Chachamim's taina was, Yoisa shall Roim of Matziv shall Betach Vahashket, since Rome is in a state of confidence, it's in a state of tranquility. Ba'oid Asher Anu Beis Hadoim Ragla Lekenu sort of Be'esh, the house of the footstool of Hashem our God is burnt up in fire. Who chilul shem shamayim benois l'chilul shem Yisrael. It's a desecration of Hashem's name, in addition to the desecration of the name of the Jewish people. Yes, even more so. Im kol utzmasa shel Raimi ukadei shalavonin ba'ader yipel, if the entire might of Rome is so that the Beis Hamikdash, which is called the Levonin, should be felled by a mighty one. Madua hi adayin adir betach v'hashkit gam ashka achsha atak Beis Hamikdash parasor. Why is it still mighty? Why is it still confident and tranquil also now, once its mission was accomplished? Once the Beis Hamikdash was burnt down, so that's it. That should not be any more a reason for the Beis Hamikdash for Rome to exist anymore. Definitely not in a confident way. So too, similar to this in the second event, when they saw a fox exiting the place, the house of the Holy of Holies, they saw in this a desecration of Hashem's name, desecration of the Jewish people's name, a place that's written on it that a foreigner, meaning someone that is foreign to the Kahuna, even a Yisrael that approaches it will die. Jeshum Yehudi also that no Yid that is prohibited to, that every Yid is prohibited to approach there. Even the Kain Gadol, Kain Shagadoshim Sha'am Yisrael, he's called the Holy of Holies of Am Yisrael. It's prohibited for him to enter, except for once a year, B'Yom Kippur. But only with this, by bringing the Ketores, he can come in. The Gam Hu Nechshav Kizar B'Chal Hashana, he's considered a foreigner the whole year. And now foxes go into it. This means to say, Iker Tanasam Hoya Amnam Nigzar Beis Hamikdash Yecharev Yisrael Yiglu. True, it was decreed that the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed and the Yidden will go into exile. Achmadua Yigaram Aidekach Gam Chil Hashem B'Chil Shem Yisrael. Why should be caused through this also a Chil Hashem and the Chil of the name of Yisrael? Aleph, the question is, Rome doesn't have to remain after the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, now calm and tranquil and confident. When it says in the prophecy of the Churban that it will be plowed over like a field, it could be in other parts of the Beis Hamikdash. Not specifically in the Holy of Holies, a place that even the most holy, it says, that someone that is foreign will die. On Rabbi Akiva, for this, Rabbi Akiva replied, if so is for those that transgress his will, how much is for those that fulfill his will? It's true. When Rome is still sitting confident, when those that fulfill his will, while the house of our God is burnt in fire, it's a desecration of the Hashem's name and the Jewish people's name. Through that, the good will be even greater. Al achas kama v'kama, as the expression is, how much more so? Keloimar, this means to say, Rabbi Kiva ra'a asatoiv hayoytze afilu matzlachas raimi. Rabbi Kiva saw the good that is a result even from Rome's success. Va'afilu mechil shem shamayim v'Yisrael, even from the desecration of the Hashem's name and the Yidden's name. Similar to this, also in the second story, Kiyum Nevuas HaChurban, the fulfillment of the Nevuah of the Churban, b'milua in its full sense, ad sheshul yoytz mekodesh kadoshim, till even a fox exits the kodesh kadoshim. Hi'aychachal lakach is a proof for the fact shenevuas hageula shel Zechariah teskayim b'sif shleimus, that the prophecy of the redemption of Zechariah will be fulfilled in its utmost. There was no doubt by Rabbi Akiva about the fulfillment of the prophecy. But rather on the manner of the fulfillment of the prophecy. It will be a completely total type of fulfillment of it. Like we find in different promises in the Torah, that some of them could just be in a way of allegory, a metaphor. It doesn't have to mean literal. For example, concerning the prophecy that it will be plowed over like a field. When it's plowed like a field, it could come out of it that there'll be a blossoming and a growth, that you'll be able to gather your grain, or you'll be able to gather 100 times as much, or you'll be able to have, like it says in the Gemara, that when Mashiach comes, the wheat kernels will be as big as kidneys, v'af yoser, and even more so. I don't know what this is over here, this line. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties over here. So, one second. Mikach k'fishiyeh los rak los love v'nigash. Will be like in the future, that the way how it will be planting will be that the one who plows will meet the harvester. In other words, it will be in a very short amount of time will take for everything to grow. So through the manner of the fulfillment of the prophecy of the destruction, he sees the way how the nevuah of the geula comes about in a greater way. So this is one second. This is the reason that's why specifically of all the negative prophecies that he mentions only that negative prophecy of that Sion will be plowed over like a field. Plowing a field is not to ruin it, but just the opposite. It's necessary to bring the field to its perfection. That the earth will give forth its produce. Through plowing, so then the growth is afterwards the way it's supposed to be. And how well you plow the field, that's how the growth will be. So that's what Rabbi Akiva was trying to tell us the message. So too in our matter. The destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is likened to plowing. Only through the type of plowing, that's how it will come the growth of the geula. Therefore, when Rabbi Akiva saw that the destruction, the plowing became complete, and how is it complete? In other words, a total plowing ad l'makom kodesh kadoshim, till even the place of the Holy of Holies. So then, so then this was a proof of the fact that that also the redemption will also be in a perfect and complete manner. One second. Okay, let's continue a little bit further, just a little bit to be able to understand the disagreement, and we're going to skip towards the end a little bit. According to this, we can explain the dispute between Rabbi Akiva and the other ones that argued with him. Mitzvahs. This is dependent on a general question when it comes to a number of mitzvahs. Do we now consider and take in consideration what's going on now to determine how to perform a mitzvah concerning what's going to happen in the future? Hadugma, for example, if a sick person and the doctors told him that if he's going to fast on Tzom Gedalia, he's not going to be able to fast on Yom Kippur. Is he allowed to, and does he need to fast on Tzom Gedalia? That is something that the Chachamim say, something from the Nevi'im. Despite the fact that if he fasts on Tzom Gedalia, it will prevent him from fulfilling a mitzvah min ha-Torah, lotzim Yom Kippur. Or is it prohibited for him to fast on Tzom Gedalia? Should be able to fast on Yom Kippur. In other words, do we look at what's going on now, or do we look at what's going to happen in the future? According to this, we could explain the dispute between Rabbi Akiva and the other Tanoim on the desecration of Hashem's name and the desecration of the Jewish people's name in the present, because later on, when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a great advantage for the Yidden and the Kiddush Shem Shemayim Gadol Moed and a great sanctification of Hashem's name. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lazar Azari, Rabbi Shua Soivrim, those three hold, we should not take in consideration what's going to come about in the future. We have to take in consideration the present situation. Now it's the opposite of sanctifying Hashem's name, in the name of the Jewish people. Therefore, we have to cry now about it. Rabbi Akiva holds, also for the present, what's going to come out in the future brings us to how we approach it. Therefore, if from a desecration of Hashem's name, and if from a desecration of the Jewish people's name in the present, will sprout from that an advantage in sanctification of Hashem's name and the name of the Yidden in the future redemption, this overweighs the present, to such a degree that he is masachik, that he laughs because of it. And now he's already laughing because of what's going to happen in the future from that. Let's go on a little bit further. 1 second. Let me. Okay. So back to the place. So we were talking about that Rabbi Akiva is looking at seeing the page is the wrong way. Mhm. Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to go through different details about um, how a person is supposed to look at the negative. Kol ma b'ovid rachmano l'tav ovid, etc., etc. That there's no question about it. The Rebbe says that all of them agree the rule that a person has to say when it comes, something bad happens, that they all agree that you have to say anything that happens is done for good. Let's skip over to the bottom last paragraph on this page. Hachidush bin Yaneinu, the novelty in our case, Sherbakiva loy ra'a b'ra shul sheyatzer b'shkosh kadoshim rachtei tzotay. The Rabbi Kiva did not see the bad of a fox coming out of the Holy of Holies just a good result. El ra oisa atzma kechelik v'aschola. He saw it as a part of and a beginning, shal hatoiv, of the beginning, of the good. I'm sorry. And that's what he explains. That's why he was laughing. And let's see if there is. Let's go down to the bottom of this of the next page, first column. The story in our situation is not this way. It says, Alachas kam v'kama. He sees the benefit that will come out of it. He sees the benefit, which was even more so than the would have been without it. In other words, when we say Kol Mada Avid Rachmanu L'Tav Avid, so then all we are knowing is what will happen later on, what will be in the future. But now it's something not good. Rabbi Akiva is saying that now is the beginning of the good. And not only is the beginning of the good, but this is the reason why the good is so much more and so much more powerful in the future. Okay. The Rebbe then connects it with the idea of Nachmu Ami, that this is going to be a double comfort because only through the destruction is how we're going to get to this double comfort. And that is, this double comfort is really the beginning and starts with the Golus itself. And the Eibishter already at the beginning of the Golus, he already calculated in such a way that we should be able to have the Geula that should come out in the best way possible. Okay, we'll stop over here. Sorry for the interruption before.